مساء الخير وعرب طوب.
Erev Tov.
Welcome everyone to the Pan Levant podcast, new episode 7. We have today a wonderful guest that I've known for a really long time who has a lot of great insight to bring to us about Syria and about the Levant region in general, including Egypt and Turkey. Her name is Rena Netjes. She's a linguist and she's a researcher, a political analyst, and she's very well versed in the Syrian conflict in Israel-Palestine and Egypt and Turkish politics. She's appeared on many broadcasts before, including BBC. She also recently wrote a article for Dawn, which Elijah actually edited about sanctions on Syria. Welcome to our podcast, Rena. Thank you so much for your time. We know that you're really busy. Let me just formally introduce you to Rena. This is Elijah. Elijah, this is Rena.
Ahlan. It's so great to meet you, Rena. And I want to direct everyone, if you can, go to the Democracy in Exile website and read Rena's piece on sanctions in Syria, the lifting of sanctions. It's a fantastic piece. It's absolutely incredible, and I encourage everyone to read it.
Perfect. So, Rena, you currently are based in Istanbul, and I know you've recently been to Damascus and saw what that was like. Looking at the news that's surrounding like the SDF, Syria, and Turkey, how do you see Turkey adjusting its policies or its politics regarding Kurdish-led autonomous region in northern Syria post-Assad?
Thanks for the very nice introduction. I have focused very much on the Arab world and on the Hebrew-speaking world, and Turkey just, like a bit on the sidelines, everything concerning to Syria. Let me put it this way.
Right.
I'm here actually for the Syria file because for many years you could only go to northern Syria. I've been like 15 times. That's why I'm actually here. But now we can go basically to all of Syria or almost all of Syria. There is many developments. Of course, the PKK has dissolved itself. Turkey has made a surprisingly approach towards the PKK now, and the PKK has said we will put down the weapons. Now, voices in Syria have said it does not apply to us. We don't belong to the PKK. It's like this alphabet soup of letters. The International Crisis Group once said PYD, YPG, but yeah, in the end, they are the Syrian branch of the PKK. If you enter northeast Syria, the first thing what you see is a huge billboard poster with Abdullah Öcalan welcoming you, and you see his poster everywhere in northeast Syria, actually. So there is definitely strong connection. This is only one aspect, but it's interesting times. Seems that maybe to recap it. Seems like everybody is tired of fighting and wants, peace. Having said that, I see from the different remarks and statements coming out of northern Syria and coming out of leaders from Kandil in northern Iraq, the headquarters of PKK, that not everybody is on board to give up the weapons in northeast Syria, at least. And I think from my interviews in Syria, from the interviews I watch in Arab media, local media, that Muslim Abdi, SDF leader, is like willing to make a deal with Damascus. It's not so easy, but in the end he's willing to do that. While some hardliners like Alder Khalil of the PYD in Hasaka, and Ilham Ahmad, they seem very less likely so. To put it also in one sentence, I know that Aldar Khalil has said to a Western diplomat recently, we'll fight till the end, we'll fight till death. So that gives it a little bit for you. The PYD has worked for years, since 2011, to have the area that they have. And they have, of course, oil, not only in Deir ez-Zor, but also in Hasaka. They have this whole opportunity to forcibly conscript young people, and that's what they're doing. Everybody has to join YPG in the area, of course, and Arabs alike. It's not easy for them. It will be, it's their dream,
Yeah.
so I don't think they easily will give that up, and definitely not Hazaka province. It's my assessment for now.
And that's very insightful, and I appreciate it. So you mentioned different leaders. One of them, you said like, yeah, I do feel like there's a difference in opinion between Mazloum Abdi and Ilhan Ahmad, right? Like they kind of seem to have differing viewpoints. Like Mazloum seems more willing to negotiate, whereas Ilhan is more like under no circumstance will we integrate. We need to enforce decentralization, as they call it. This is sort of their view. They want to like obviously, in my opinion, I think they do want separatism, but they want it but they're using like democracy to achieve it. And they think that under democratic rule, that the people of Northeast Syria would actually vote for confederalism. But this is my argument is I think that if we were actually to enforce democracy in all of Syria right now, I think most Syrians would vote to stay as one nation and they would elect like mostly like Shara friendly sort of leadership rather than SDF friendly leadership. Maybe like Kobani and Afrin might elect like more PYD leaning leaders, but I think the rest of Syria, including like Jazeera area, would definitely elect friendly leaders. And so I think like bring it on. Like if there's a challenge that democracy would bring about, a Kurdish state or an autonomous region in Northeast Syria, like I think they would lose that democratic battle. But I don't see that happening, and I do think that they're both kind of there isn't really like a democratic transition in mind for a lot of leaders right now in Syria. But going on to like the dynamics between the Shara government in Damascus, the SDF government in Northeast Syria, and the Erdogan government, do you feel like each one is kind of standing on their own and competing, or do you feel like it's Shara and Turkey versus the SDF, or do you think Shara is actually showing more restraint than Turkey wants him to, and he's actually willing to negotiate with SDF more?
Yeah, to start with the last one, we can see that from December on, SNA has still entered battles with SDF, Turkish-backed SNA, like recapturing, from their point of view, liberating Tel Rafat, which was a town taken by PYD in YPG in 2016. The Free Syrian Army was there. But I sense that Damascus, is really on the diplomatic tour. Like even though it goes extremely slow sometimes with SDF areas, but the Turkey is more pushing, to and the agreement between Abdi and Al-Shara was, like till the end of the year.
Okay.
It should be all solved, and until now there's not so much progress. Only Aleppo maybe, although there was a separate deal actually. Like in Aleppo, YPG left, but the police is still, Ashayis is still in the hand of YPG forces. But if I may, I would like to, in general, maybe like as an umbrella, maybe say that what I see in all, let's say, the minorities, like in the Kurdish, in a Kurdish society, among Kurds, among the Muwahideen Druze, they don't like to be called Druze. I learned this trip. They really don't like it. So I will use Muwahideen Druze.
Interesting. Could you elaborate on that actually? Sorry to interrupt, but what do you mean, Muwahideen Druze? I haven't heard this term before.
Okay. One step down, and then I'll go back to this one.
Sorry about that.
The spiritual leader of Jaramana, it's on the outskirts of Damascus. You have two areas where there are also many Druze, Muwahideen Druze. And in Jaramana, the spiritual leader is called Dabbous, and he explained it to me that pretty quickly after the Druze religion started, it's an offshoot of the Shia Islam. They believe in reincarnation, for example, and they have some different things. But they consider themselves definitely Muslims. They are Muslims. But one person, I hope I remember it totally correctly, but one person is called Druze, wanted to kill the leader of the sect, or he even killed him. So if you now call the sect after this person, he said, it's an insult for us. It's an accusation even. And other Druze, I asked them, they also said, we really don't like it. It's a bad name, especially because of this story. It's a very bad name for us, but we use that everybody is using Druze, so we accept it, but we don't like it. And if you Google on them, also the Lebanese Druze, then Jumblat and so on, it's all Muwahideen, al-Muwahideen. It means the united ones.
Right.
So this is it's so nice if you are on the ground and do in-depth interviews, then you hear all these things. I had never heard it before. Going back to speaking, I was 2 days in Jaramana, 1 day in Ashrafiyat, Sahnaya, that's the other Damascus suburb where there are a lot of Druze, Muwahideen Druze. Suwaida was too dangerous. My trip was 3 times canceled because the road Damascus-Suwaida was too dangerous. There were assassination attempts and so on. Even the governor of Suwaida, and also on a Druze leader, on Balbous. It all failed, but still it was too dangerous. Everybody considered it too dangerous. And also in Homs, speaking with Alawites in Homs, what my takeaway, do you say this in English? What I got from all these areas is that the loudest voices are the most extreme voices, and they talk about Damascus does not give us full rights. I understand that worry, or everybody understands that worry in minority areas. But the second step is separation or self-administration in the Alawite areas in Suwaida for the Muwahideen Druze and in northeast Syria. And I sense, of course, I did not interview thousands, but I interviewed many dozens, and of course also over the years. My sense is that the majority of all these different sects don't want a self-administration. Also, it's very hard. If I go back to northeast Syria in this sense, Kobane has a majority Kurds, but not only Kurds. Amuda has, and Qamishli, people are not, it depends maybe who you ask, but at least there is also a significant Arab population. And in Hasaka city, it's already the vast majority is Arab. So you don't have in Syria, like, forgive me for saying it, like pure Kurdish areas. Like you have in northern Iraq, you have 6 million and they are like very much on their own. But in northern Syria, it's really a mosaic. Like you go outside Amuda, you have one Arab village, you have one Yazidi village, you have one Christian village, and then you have one Kurdish village. Syria is really a mosaic wherever you go, and the percentage only, it differs. Like in one percentage, in one city, Amuda, you might have, vast majority Kurdish, and Afrin was and is again, by the way, getting very much Kurdish, and Kobane. But then you have other parts of northeast Syria. Actually, the majority of northeast Syria is Arabs. It's at least 2/3 of northeast Syria where they want this self-administration is not Kurdish, and I sense that at least the majority of the Arabs want to be part of the Damascus government. They prefer that. And even among the Kurds, they have worries. Everybody, what I think the common factor among Kurds, among Alawites, and also among Sunnis, by the way, is like, will we have really full rights? Will we head to a really democratic state? And then for the minorities, why the Constitution Declaration says that it's the Syrian Arab Republic? Why not take the Arab off? Because there is also Kurds, there's also Druze, Muwahideen Druze, there's also Alawites, so by the way, you have also Turkmens. You don't hear about them, actually. It's also a big minority. And then Christians are Assyrians in the east and Arabs in the west, roughly. So it's a whole mix. And I think there would be a lot to gain if the government of Damascus would say, okay, we take this Arab off, this Arab out of the name.
Absolutely.
Many Arabs would not be happy, but then at least you don't give a reason for the less moderates on every side to use that. It would be an easy gain in my eyes. I'm not Syrian, but given all the interviews I've done, that would be a one that would how do you say, calm down tensions everywhere, give more trust of all the areas in the Damascus government, because we already have, and of course, the Damascus government. Many people come from for many Syrians, very scary, and non-Syrians also scary backgrounds. Now, I believe the Shara himself really, I believe he changed. Like, for example, if we go to a neighboring country, Israel, it was Begin, I think, who blew up the King David Hotel 100 years ago, about 100 years ago, with the Irgun. And he later on became a president, and he did a peace treaty with Egypt. So people can change. We see it in Sinn Féin, in the IRA in Northern Ireland. But people want maybe a bit more change. And what I also saw is that many people are pushing, like around Shara, many people are pushing for this more change. I could say a little bit more of that. Yeah. So that's, when you're on the ground, then it sounds, for me, it's still with all the mistakes and all the tensions that are going on. But for me, it looks more hopeful than when you only look from outside. Maybe.
For sure. And I wish I could go visit, but it's just too costly at the moment. But I have been, honestly, just from observing from Canada, it's been a little disappointing. Obviously, I'm super proud that he's even put on a suit, for example. That was already impressive to me. The very basic moderate reforms that I witnessed in the last few months, I've been surprised to even see them. But at the same time, I'm a little disappointed that there hasn't been more attempts at fostering inclusivity, having a Sunni governor for Sueda. That's not a good idea. You know what I mean? It should be someone who represents that area. And I do think that Shara has nothing to lose from holding elections because he's very popular. He will win, no problem. So I think this is also something that he could give that would take away excuses. But one last question just regarding SDF. Do you think that they are still occupying the minds of the West, or do you think they've kind of disposed of them and they don't view them as a valuable asset anymore, and they're kind of on their own now?
What I understand is that the Americans only, we have that in the Klingendahl report in 2019, the Americans only supported them militarily, never politically. Also, Kurds are divided. About half Syrian Kurds are outside Syria, in Iraq and in Turkey, of all places, in southern Turkey. And in Germany, the Netherlands, my country, and this was still going on until recently, that all these Kurds are leaving because they don't want to fight for YPG, and they don't want to, and people are leaving because the curriculum is PKK curriculum, which does not allow you to go to any university except for Deir on the university. So these are two big reasons, and child abduction, and minors are also being.
And they're limiting them from fleeing still, right? Even right now, it's difficult to flee to Damascus government areas, right?
Yeah, you cannot. You're only two smugglers. I met. There is a little part till Abyad and Ras Al Ain, what's in the hand of SNA, and that's encircled totally by SDF, and so you cannot go from that area, which is in the western corner of Hasaka province. Sorry, I throw a lot of details, maybe.
No, please.
But so it's like the enclave of the opposition, the SNA, in northeast Syria since 2019. And if you want to go from that area to Damascus, it's impossible. You have to go through Turkey. But I was in Damascus, and suddenly one person I knew from that area, from Ras Al Ain, came to me and said, "Hey, Rena," I said, "how did you make it to come here?" I said, "I smuggled myself for $500 through SDF area." And it was super scary, but it's through Raqqa, because he wants to look for a job. He had, through the war, stopped his university studies. He wanted to catch up his studies in Damascus and look for a job. That's why he came. You can only come through smugglers. Yes, so that's still not so fine. It's still not, like the areas are still it's between them. I heard also that directly after the agreement of al-Shara and Abdi, some like former Free Syrian Army guys from Deir ez-Zor went to Deir ez-Zor directly because they want to see their relatives, their families after 10 years, and they all got arrested, so it's I don't know if they are released by now, but I heard from different sources, I hear these cases. So I think it really happened. So there is still a lot to work on between these areas.
Yeah, it seems March 10 was not as monumental as I thought. Like the March 10 agreement between Abdi and Shara.
Now everybody is already happy that in the Kurdish areas then, or in the northeast, that that will not be a battle. There will be not a fight, because people there's always the possibility that Turkey gets impatient and wants to go in. That's the worry. So everybody was already relieved that this agreement at least was signed, although it's not yet very much implemented, because the main thing is SDF want to enter the new Syrian army as a bloc, as their own bloc.
Right.
And
I think they're just buying time. I think they know their conditions won't be met, and they're just buying time, to be honest.
Could be. We have to see, and yeah.
I want to shift gears briefly to Syria's economic standing. We'll start with current news, and then we'll move with some news from the previous weeks. Today, there was an agreement announced where there will be a $7 billion investment into Syria's energy sector, led by Qatar, Turkey, and the US. What does this deal signal, for Syria internally, and also Syria's standing in the region?
Yeah, the big problem for example, for Syrians to start a business, or for Syrian refugees to go back. And even for myself, I am considering, because I'm here in Istanbul for the Syria file, but now I would maybe like to move to Damascus. But the electricity situation is so bad still. You have only, and you don't know when. You only in downtown Damascus, you only have like few hours, and you really don't know when, and one day you have internet and the next day you have nothing, so it's completely unreliable. So you cannot put business, you cannot work. If I would go there, I'm also teaching Arabic online, I cannot do this because I have no internet, so you will lose. And that's for many people is a problem. That's in former regime areas, by the way, and also in SDF areas, the situation is the same. Now, in the north, for years, opposition have been working with Turkey to be connected to the Turkish electricity grid. So there you have 24/7 internet and electricity, like in Turkey. But Damascus is very far away. Damascus should be connected to Jordan. And I understand that all this infrastructure has been whether destroyed or stolen, that it's really bad, this situation. So a deal to solve that, in the southern areas with Jordan, and in the north, like I'm talking about Aleppo and so on, with Turkey, that's a big thing, because with the promise that sanctions will be removed, it might take some time before everything is really in effect. But because many investors, Syrian investors, for example, in Egypt, they want to go back to Syria, but you need to have a factory running. And I know the current government is prioritizing the energy for factories, like in Aleppo and Damascus. They have more hours electricity than homes, but still it's not 24/7. So this is a really, if you want the economy to kick off, if you want refugees to return from neighboring countries, from Europe, and that's what Europe wants. It's not such a big thing for the US. There are not so many, but that's what Europe wants, and that's what neighboring countries want. So it's a very important step to fix this electricity grid and to, it's really a basic if you want to have a job, and without a job you can have a house, but if you have no job, then you also cannot survive in Syria.
And continuing on the concept of sanctions in Syria, I mean, your article in Democracy in Exile was all around this topic. For our audience, and I think for a Western audience in general, when Trump made the announcement of absolving all sanctions in Syria, I think many people thought that was it. The situation is over. But as more and more information has come out, especially for someone like me who's not an expert in sanctions, it seems like it's not that simple. There's many different types of sanctions in Syria. There's Caesar sanctions, which you wrote a lot about in your article, state sponsor of terrorism sanctions, a host of different types of sanctions. Can you give our audience a broad overview of the different types of sanctions and what Trump's move to absolve sanctions really meant in practice?
Yeah, I have to say we interviewed a lot of experts for the article, because I'm not a sanctioned expert, but there are some sanctions the president can remove himself, and there is sanctions, of course, related to the Assad regime, which will stay, and there is sanctions which have to go to Congress to be voted away, in short, and then. The Europeans have their sanctions, other countries, and there is sanctions on persons, but on Bashar himself and on the Minister of the Interior and on many Syrian companies. But these have also now been removed. But if I listen to like factory owners and so on, everybody expects that it will take. It's not really clear, but it will take 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, for we have full, full effect of everything. So in short, I hope I answered your question, well enough. But this is the main thing. And another thing maybe is that because of the sanctions, Syrians cannot transport any money, and also non-Syrians, to Syria. So you cannot use your bank card to pay. You have to do everything with cash. So no factory owner will take a lot of cash, and go to Syria. And then if you want to do these big infrastructure projects, also no foreign investors can do anything, because you have to bring cash. Nobody's going to cross the border with I would think with $1 million, or I don't know how many dollars. It's a risk to be stolen. There are still gangs out there. So to be able to transfer money from outside Syria by Syrians, number one, and also by non-Syrians to Syria, that is a big thing as well.
And how much would you say, like, basic remittances from Syrians in Europe and America going back to Syria constitutes a basic economic stronghold for most Syrian families? Is that a large factor of the Syrian economy, or is it relatively minor, would you say?
Yeah, this is very large. For example, here in Istanbul, I know Syrians that came alone. Their family, for example, relatives are still in Aleppo, and they work day and night and send all the money to their relatives to survive.
Yeah,
father, mother,
my family in
sisters,
Damascus would not survive without remittances too. Yeah, basically everyone is surviving from remittances.
Exactly, and now it is the following: the Syrian pound went up a bit after. I don't know what's the rate today. After good news, the Syrian pound went up. But that means also that if families who could survive on the $100 that was sent by their son every month from Sweden, for example, or from the Netherlands, or 100 euros, that now it became, because the Syrian pound went up, now they can buy less for that. So even here you got a little problem. Yeah, if you look at salaries, we're talking about state salaries, $20, $30. People have told me in the past that was enough. That was just enough to go one time to the supermarket. That's it. So they totally rely on a second job and on remittances, from outside.
Yeah, that's incredible. I want to shift gears also to another topic that you have a lot of expertise in. As you mentioned in the beginning, you're able to speak Hebrew. From what Hayan told me, your background in learning both Hebrew and Arabic comes from studying in Tel Aviv, in Israel. Can you give us a little overview about what that was like, what the experiences were like learning both Hebrew and Arabic, and also its connotations politically? Would you say learning Arabic in Israel was viewed as something to be shunned? It was a negative. What was your personal experience like in that moment?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I go one step back before that. I grew up in the east of the Netherlands, very close to the German border, with all the stories of the Holocaust. My grandparents on both sides, on my mother's side, they hid many Jewish children from Amsterdam. And then because of all kinds of razzias in Amsterdam, and from my father's side, resistance fighters, British pilots who tried to fight against the Nazi Germans. So in the Netherlands, I think in the US, quite the same. There was a lot of sympathy, of course, with the Jewish people after all the undescribable horror that happened in Germany. And every year, a group of mainly Jewish teenagers from Israel, but also some Arab Palestinians were joining them, came to Germany for Wiedergutmachung, you say in German, to reconcile.
March of the Living, I think we call it in America.
It was something to reconcile between the Germans and the Israelis, the Jews, after all what happened. And then there was an extra week in the Netherlands, and my parents organized this week in the Netherlands, like arranged host families, arranged excursions to the Anne Frank house and everything. I don't know. I think my parents got this through the municipality of Haifa or something. I don't even know exactly. And then I heard Hebrew all the time. I wanted to study Hebrew. I was 16. It was the first time there. And my parents already, when I was a child, they put the Hebrew letter posters on my door. So I blamed them, actually, how this all came about. And I was always interested in the Middle East. So from home, we were always, I was reading about Hezbollah when I was a teenager. And so I wanted to understand the Middle East. So I came to study Hebrew, was not possible only. I did not know, could only combine it with Arabic. But then I thought, oh, it's also good because there are also Arab speakers in Israel. And it went like this. I studied in Israel. I studied Hebrew, but also Arab-Israeli conflict. I have to say I learned much more. I learned about the Nakba and so on in Tel Aviv University, not in Amsterdam. And I heard about massacres that had been done, like Deir and so I heard it in Tel Aviv. I had never heard that in the Netherlands at that time. So I was learning Hebrew, and I also did some Arabic literature courses for my reading list. Like, for example, Palestinian poetry about the stone. There were all kinds of poets about stone. It was the time of the intifadas. And there were Arab students and Jewish students, and they were always sitting apart. And I was the only one who was like, one break I would sit with the Jewish students, and the other break I would sit with the Palestinian students, but they were never mixing up. There was something very clear for me as a 24-year-old or 25-year-old to see all this. So that's where it all started. At that time, you still had the peace movement, Shalom Achshav, Peace Now, and you have Meretz, was quite a leftist group. But it all over the years became much less. Already that time, by the way, I had one Israeli friend, and she said, and I told her, why don't you talk to Palestinians? But she said, talk to Palestinians? I cannot talk to dogs, So you already had this kind of rhetoric. Not everyone, but you had already, I was really shocking for me to hear people talk like this. And now very unfortunately, we see it much more.
I guess you were there shortly after the wake of Oslo, like literally Second Intifada. And I personally, of course, I'm not old enough to remember any of this. I wasn't alive, but the shift really did seem to occur shortly after Rabin's murder, but which was done by a Jewish Israeli extremist. It wasn't done by a Palestinian. But that's really when you saw the Kahanist type of rhetoric start to take root in society, with the fallout of the peace agreement. Would you say from the time you were there to the present day, you have personally seen that shift to only grow ever more present within Israeli society, that Kahanist-like rhetoric calling Palestinians terrorists, anti-Semitic animals, and also seeking expansionary aims, like we're currently seeing from the Ben Gavirs of the world, from the Smoltriches? Is that something, since you were there in the Second Intifada to the present, that you've seen a greater shift in?
Yeah, and also it made me going less to Israel because it was really hard. I was there in September, October.
Wow.
And there are still people, who also really want to change.
Mm-hmm.
But as we can see, they're probably not the majority.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I want to talk a little bit more about your linguistics background. Because you're someone who both knows Hebrew and Arabic, you probably know, especially in the Middle East, language is a very polarized political construct. It's heavily tied with nationalisms, politics, and many other controversial concepts in the region, especially in Israel-Palestine, where such outwardly competing nationalism really grafted onto Hebrew nationalism and Arabic-based nationalism. How would you say language became a political tool, if any, during your time studying it within Israel? Was it at all used as a bridge-building tool to showcase the similarities between Hebrew and Arabic, or was it more so used as a tool to entrench one's nationalism in the land and justify their own claims at the expense of the other people in the land?
Yeah, you know what? There's some aspects, like the biggest group of Jews who moved to Israel, immigrated to Israel, the Moroccan ones, they speak Arabic also.
Yeah.
I was surprised later on when my Arabic was more advanced, because first my Hebrew was much more advanced, that I could get by pretty much also everywhere with Arabic, because there are so many Jews from originally Arabic speaking countries. That's one thing. Then what's also surprisingly that some people would tell me, "Can you please speak English to me because I don't know Hebrew?" That was the American Jews. I also encountered that when I spoke to people in Hebrew, that they say, "Sorry, can you please speak English because my Hebrew is not so advanced." It's like American Jews who came to Jerusalem, and also in a real Russian accent, Ani lo mevin ifrit. You understand that? I don't understand Hebrew, like Russian Jews who don't speak Hebrew.
Russian,
so
yeah.
so it's a whole mix there, language-wise. But when I studied in Israel, I think people were still learning at high school modern standard Arabic. At least my friends were. Not that they liked it so much, but they were. But later on, I think it was all skipped, and the gap between Hebrew and Arabic was getting bigger. Was getting and then, for example, if you go to Haifa, there is less tension. It's more. I met in Haifa, even here in Istanbul, when Israelis were still coming. Now they're not coming anymore, and between tension between Turkey and Israel, but even here, I met Jewish, Israelis who speak fluently Arabic, and even like a Moroccan kind of Arabic. How did you learn that? Or Palestinian Arabic? How did you learn that? Yeah, my neighbors are Arabs, and they taught me, and so you also have that. Right? Yeah. You have this whole variety of, but unfortunately, the ones in power and there must be a big chunk of current Israeli society, otherwise they wouldn't be in power. It might, is kind of behind the idea. Let's get rid of the Palestinians, or at least a big chunk. I refrain from putting a percentage on it. On the other hand, I went in October. I went with a group of Israelis. They go every single Shabbat, every Saturday. They go from Jerusalem. They go to Hebron, Masafra Yatta. They go physical presence, so Israeli settlers will not attack the Arab. So every time they were there, and when we were there, also Israeli settlers came. So I stayed a little bit in the back because I thought, I don't want to be arrested by IDF. There was that week 2 Germans were arrested, but they all keep it quiet. They don't go in the media. So, but I just heard when I arrived that it happened. So I thought I don't want to get arrested. They were already in jail for several days. Later on, they were deported to Germany. But I saw it with my own eyes that settlers are coming and with stones. But because the Israelis outnumbered them, so they went away. Like 4 or 5 settlers came, but Israelis were like with 10. So that's when so it really helps. But we see now what happened in the southern Hebron Hills, Masafriyata, that also there the tensions are increasing, and increasingly homes are attacked and taken. And I talked in Bethlehem with Christians, and I told them, I see you maybe next year. And they told me, we don't know if we'll be here next year. Might be refugees in Jordan. That's basically the feeling in the West Bank.
It's so sad to see. And with Masafriyata, I mean, it's crazy because the film No Other Land, globally recognized film, was focused on Masafriyata. And even after the film, one of the directors was literally attacked in settler violence. It's so brutal to see. But I like the point you brought up about Haifa, because Haifa is a very unique city. It's one of the few mixed cities in Israel where Jews and Arabs have freedom to interact, to talk to each other, to get to know the quote-unquote other. And you see politically, they're much more progressive. They're much more receptive to defending Palestinian rights in Haifa. I mean, the group Standing Together, Omdim Biachad, was started in Haifa by a lot of progressives.
I didn't know this. Okay,
but it's very
it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, that's from there for Haifa or Tel Aviv, but Haifa is really
It's so fascinating, even the contrast of, because you were talking about in Tel Aviv, you saw that there was at least amongst, I assume, students of social segregation. The Jewish students kept with themselves, the Arab students kept with themselves. But in Haifa, you see a very different dynamic. Jews are learning Arabic, the Arabs are learning Hebrew. Both peoples are interacting with each other. And so to me, it makes sense what you're saying for that to be a level for progress, a method for progress, at least. And my question basically is, do you find that to be not just exclusive to Israel? Would you say it's even applicable to Syria, where there's these mixed communities? Do you find in your experience of interviewing people, interacting with the quote unquote other, no matter what that other is, really influences them in a more progressive direction politically? It could be with minorities in Syria. It could be with different communities in Lebanon. I'm just interested in your experience, whether that's been a salient trend throughout the Levant.
Oh, that's very interesting. I would say the gap between, like Sunni Syrians and Alawites and Druze, and so it's way, way less than the gap between Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs. Many, but you don't hear them, those voices in media. People also express to me, we need as moderate Alawites, we need to get our voices out, but all Western media is going to Al-Hajri only, Al-Hajri, the extreme Druze. They were really the first thing what they said, we were so fed up with reports in Western media. That's what the first thing what they said in Jaramana, that everybody is, like giving voice to these extreme people, while the majority of us, we live together. For example, in Jaramana, for origin, it's a Druze, Muwahideen Druze area, but since the 70s, other people came from Iraq, the wars in Iraq, from Lebanon, Israeli war in southern Lebanon. I did not know this, and also many during the war from Deir, ez-Zor, from other parts of Syria. They say we have everyone, whole Syria we have now here, including from Iraq and Lebanon. People are living together, and there is also what I did not mention. There is many mixed marriages, like Sunni with Druze, Sunni with Kurds. So also there's another aspect. Yes, I think it's very important to say. What I'm hearing from Syrians is so much more than only different sects. They speak the same language. They love this. They listen to the same music. They eat the same food. Being of a certain sect is only one aspect, but not only the big defining, because also Druze among themselves are divided. I sense, at least at the outskirts of Damascus, because Sweda, as I explained, I couldn't go, unfortunately. But I think what I'm hearing is also from Sweda, that the Muwahideen Druze are majority, they are with the state. Like the Lebanese Druze are with the Lebanese state, and the Israeli Druze are with the Israeli state. Very much, they're like a tribe. They are, since Sykes-Picot, divided over several countries, also a few in Jordan. But in Syria, 10 times as much than in Israel, for example. And in Lebanon, I don't know exactly, but I think almost the same as in Syria. So many want to live together, but yeah, there are concerns. There's security concerns, but they want to live together. And what was actually also interesting is that in a meeting with the deputy security director of Eastern Ghouta, Jeremiah is a part of Eastern Ghouta, Druze leader and also other Druze said, why is the government not stopping Israel? Because Israel is taking Druze villages in near Mount Hermon and so on. And then you have a lot, especially in Israeli media, that the Muwahideen Druze are with Israel and Israel is protecting them. By the way, in Sweda last month, Israel killed with the airstrike 3 or 4 residents, they were Druze, were killed. And in Sakhnaya, several injured. I think BBC Arabic had reported one was killed, but at least several were injured by Israeli airstrike. We had this weekend that Israel bombed a location, I think former Iranian weapons system, but I'm not 100% sure. But in the coastal areas, they normally bomb these weapon storages, right? But also an Alawite citizen was killed. So they are very skeptic, the Muwahideen Druze, that Israel is protecting them. No, Israel wants to use the Israeli Druze to repress the Palestinians, to use them to repress the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. That was the thing what I heard in Syria. So I would say that the gap, between Jews and Arabs, with exception maybe from Haifa, then, we have exceptions. Also in villages, you have exceptions, of course. And also in Jerusalem, you have exceptions. Yeah, in the eastern Jerusalem, I also saw people sitting together, you have exceptions. It's very nice to see also, of course. It is hopeful to see. But the gap is less than in Syria between the different sects than in general Jews and Palestinians.
And like you said, in Syria they intermarry. In Israel, intermarriage is very, very rare. And even if they do get intermarried, there will be settler or far right religious groups coming in to come in to disrupt the wedding, right? So it's so taboo for Jews and Arabs to even marry each other in Israel. And so yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The gap is leaps and bounds greater in Israel than it is in the rest of the Levant. Not even close.
Yeah, unfortunately. And and of course we had in March the events at the coastal areas, which started with regime remnants. I did an investigation and I co-wrote a piece with a Finnish colleague, Sanna Jokinen, about that. It started with Assad remnants, regime remnants coming from Jabal Muhsin from Iran, from Lebanon, but supported by Iran. They entered Syria, and some of them were already in Syria, but they more entered. And they killed like 400 general security, and then hell broke loose, of course, and there were many reactions, on every Alawite, from extremist elements that you still have, like in former HTS or in some brigades that are still in Idlib. Mainly, what I understand from local NGOs and local activists and local journalists. And some foreign fighters who don't have this, feeling of Syria, that Syria is always a mosaic of people living together. That that resulted in the killing of hundreds of Alawites, very unfortunately. you have that, but it's not. It's a shock for everyone. It's not the general feeling that this is good or something. No, no, no. Everybody it's very sad. Very, you know, these people need to be taken to court, and that's different. I think what you have in Israel, what's happening in Gaza. You know, many people find it not so problematic that so many innocents are being killed because basically everyone is Hamas. No.
Hayan, you're muted. We can't hear you audio wise.
There was a contingent of Syrians that unfortunately did, feel like this was a comeuppance for the community that stood by Assad. And obviously, that's not the general sentiment, but hopefully, we can build, infrastructure for reconciliation, for reversing these narratives that, oh, they deserved it for sticking by Assad or whatever, because, it hurts us and it hurts us all in the end. But moving on to your personal life and experiences, challenges you've faced previously. I've always been curious to ask you, since we've been like friends for a while now, just how did, because you've reported on North Africa. I think you've said you've been to Egypt and Libya before, and you reported on the Arab Spring when it was in full force, right? When Morsi was in power, and then his ouster, and then when Sisi was in power as well. Could you tell us about the events that led up to your imprisonment in Egypt? And could you like tell us like in detail like the harrowing story of how you were able to get out and how that compares to stories like Ala, who is still imprisoned in Egypt now?
Yeah, actually, Egypt is a very sad case, huh?
Yeah.
So, if you see that the European Union now they removed the sanctions, they announced, but like if the European Union demands the Damascus government conditions, the Damascus government, to respect human rights, which is very okay, the very okay, but they don't do that with Egypt. Egypt has 70,000, I think, political prisoners, and they von der Leyen gave Egypt 6 billion, to, I would say, to prevent any Palestinian from leaving Egypt to Europe.
Yeah.
Like a few months ago or several months ago, maybe now already a year ago. I don't know exactly when that was, but maybe a year ago already. I was in Egypt many times, but I was living in Egypt when the revolution started. I was in the middle of everything. Already before that, I got, SMSs on my telephone sometimes, like stop reporting or, but I went to the embassy, Dutch embassy very much. And they advised me actually to come every week, but I was not living too close because then the Egyptian intelligence would know that we are very good, together. Then the first time that I got in trouble was that I made a report about youth unemployment in the area where I lived, outside in a suburb, Rahab city, in eastern Cairo. And then the owner of the restaurant said, "Oh, you like where I was asking people outside?" He said, or cafe. Said, "Would you like to come in? You can drink a cup of coffee. We can talk about it." And then he asked me, "Can you show your passport?" Which I should never have done. And then he grasped my passport and he went to the police and he made up a whole story like she's bringing fake news. And police believed her. And so I ended up in a police cell that night. And I called the Dutch embassy and they said, "We cannot do anything for you." But they treated me like I was a drugs criminal or something. I felt like they didn't take me. But it was apparently somebody who really didn't know me, because the next day the ambassador heard of the story and he interfered and he got me out. That was Anna Morsi. And then later on, almost a year later, I saw on the internet that they were looking for a Dutch journalist, and in Arabic. A British journalist put that on. They were looking for a Dutch journalist who lives in the Marriott, who works for Al Jazeera, and a whole list which did not apply to me. But I directly sent it to my ambassador, Dutch ambassador, when I saw. And he said, I called him. He said, isn't it you? I said, no, it's nothing of this applies to me. But then the embassy went looking in the evening. I did not have a response. In the morning, also not yet. And then in the afternoon, I got an email, Rena, can you come as soon as possible to the embassy? So then I knew it was me. That was a very scary moment because I knew that the Egyptian police knew where I lived. So I thought they might already be around my apartment. I was really thought 50-50 tonight. I end up in jail, or I managed to reach the embassy safe. And for background, Peter Greston, Australian journalist who worked for Al Jazeera, he was arrested, and he was already at that time a few weeks in jail. I told to the embassy, I'm too afraid to take a taxi to the embassy because there are checkpoints, they will find out about me. So the embassy sent their car, the ambassador. But even to walk from my apartment to where the car was, because I had to walk maybe 100 meters because the car could not reach exactly where I live. There was a gate also. So, and I thought by myself, I'm not taking my whole suitcase. I'll just do like I'm going to the fitness. So I do my sporting stuff and a bag. So the Egyptians who might be outside try to find me don't see that I'm not fleeing or something. So it's all these things go through your mind, right? I thought I have to at least take all my laptop and phones and everything with me. Even I took my creams because I thought if I end up in jail, I don't want to look bad, these things like this. But when I reached the embassy car, where I felt like already half relieved, but then on the way to the embassy, there was the banner on Egyptian TV that they were looking for me. At least the Egyptians had my name wrong. But it was really scary, huh? You go through Cairo, but all the checkpoint and police, and you're wanted as a jihadi, as a big terrorist. That's when I got one Dutch journalist said, Rena, is your passport name, your church name, is that this name? And then I also kind of cried. I thought, oh, if he knows, then maybe other people might know. Because at least my name, Rena, is not, my church name, which is in the passport. So there I had some winning.
I see.
But when I arrived at the embassy, I was too afraid also to go out of the car. Go out of the car and enter the embassy. I asked a diplomat, please come to the car with two persons, and I'm in between you, so a guard or police is not going to arrest me.
Mm.
I was that scared, and I was 4 days hiding. I really, really felt like Anne Frank. And sometimes when I heard something, I got up because I thought the Egyptians are going to get me.
And this was under CC, right?
I could not say Anne Frank because that was, of course, horrible. But I was also I was very scared, to express. I was very scared that the Egyptians would come and take me, because they put all these accusations on me that I was making explosives. That was in 2014 in January, the end of January. That was when Sisi was there. And then I arrived at the embassy, Dutch embassy. Sorry for all the details, but it's always difficult to tell this one.
We want to listen.
All of them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then the ambassador had just left. That's why the car was available. And the car was at the airport, so it was not so far from my home. So that all worked for me. And when I arrived, the deputy ambassador turned out to be a journalist for the same newspaper that I worked for before he became a diplomat, and that he had to run to the Dutch embassy in Romania because he had to run for his life for the Stasi, I think it's called there, or something like this, the Romanian secret police. So he understood he was very helpful. But they first had no idea why I was in trouble. But I had to explain them. I had a half an hour conversation in December with a journalist of Al Jazeera English. Peter Grester worked for there for Al Jazeera English. And then instead of in the lobby, they had asked me, can you please go up in a Marriott hotel to our office is on the, I don't know which floor. So I didn't even know that they had an office in the hotel. And that got me in trouble because then I had to pass security, and then I saw the security becoming very nervous, taking a copy of my passport. So I knew it was all that, And then later on, I learned that everyone who visited Al Jazeera English was supposed to be in jail, was a terrorist, and everything. Everybody who got information from Al Jazeera English is,
Wow.
They all got in jail. They all got arrest warrants. So I didn't know it at the time, of course. So actually, they also brought me in trouble. We should have just stick, for coffee in the lobby and not to their office. But anyway, that was in December. The end of December, the whole office was raided and arrested. Peter Grester was there, the Australian journalist. He was arrested as well. And in the end, he was 1 year in prison. Anyway, when I arrived at the embassy, the deputy ambassador, Rafael, what was his second name even, Fargas, I think. I'm very thankful for him. He called the deputy foreign affairs minister. He said, I just gave the Egyptians 10 visa today. I could ask something in return. So he put it on the speaker. It was the current foreign affairs minister. The then deputy minister is now the foreign affairs minister. And he said, we are in contact with the Dutch journalist. The idea was not to say where I am. We know her very well. We think it's a big misunderstanding that the Egyptians are now looking for her. She's well connected with, with people from The Guardian, New York Times. If she puts out a tweet that she is in hiding somewhere in Egypt, it will blow your whole narrative. It will really harm you, because the Egyptians were trying to sell that they're pro-democracy. And also I was lucky that the foreign affairs minister, Shukri at the time, was going to do a tour to Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands the week after. So it would, if a Dutch journalist would be in trouble in Egypt, it would, this whole tour would fail. To يعني تصحيح الصورة, they say, to correct the picture that the West has about Egypt. That was the tour, So, and then the reaction of the deputy minister was, no, let her not put a tweet. We will help her. So it was very great. So I thought I would fly out. I had given them an offer. I'm willing to leave Egypt, just fly out, because there was an American journalist was arrested the week before, or 2 weeks before, something like this. And he was 4 days in jail, and Americans had made a deal that he could fly out, just leave Egypt. So I thought I'd present the same deal. It worked for the American, it would work for me. And also he put on the speaker the conversation with the national prosecutor. Now the national prosecutor, I forgot his name, but he said, yeah, I got her case. I already thought she's not guilty, but unfortunately I brought it all to the judge, so I cannot do anything anymore. It's now under the judge. So I'm so sorry, I cannot do anything. I think she's innocent, but I cannot do anything. So I hope that I would be able to leave Egypt that same night, but in the end it took 4 days, and we thought of other scenarios. But then the same Egyptian deputy minister came with a call. She can leave now, take the first plane out. And then the Dutch diplomats brought me to the airport and waited for me until they went with me to the gate. So I was really out. So that's the story with Egypt. And
But one detail, sorry, you were at the door of the embassy in the embassy car and you asked someone to come escort you. Was this when you were arrested, or when was the exact time that you were arrested?
But when I was arrested was under Morsi. Under Sisi, I managed to escape. I was not arrested.
Oh,
I
I
was
see. Okay.
arrested.
That makes
I was
sense.
arrested that first time in 2013 when the owner of a cafe
Yeah.
grasped my passport, and he
Right.
went to the police office, and then I also went to the police office to explain,
Wow.
that he's making up a story. But then in the end, but instead of believing me, they arrested me, and
Right.
I went into the police cell. That was 2013. But I liked Egypt so much, I even went back. Many people
Wow.
said, and I was on a show with Muna Shazli, famous, like the Oprah Winfrey of Egypt, something, and she apologized in this show. So I felt like safe enough to go back for that because she had me on the show, and the days after, everybody on the street recognized me and
Wow.
also apologized. So I thought, it's safe enough to go back. But this time is another story. Although I hope I can, with the current minister, I can maybe get a solution. But I'm not. We'll see.
So you were saved last second by.
Last second, and by the way, half a year later there was a sentence, 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you were sentenced when you were already gone, right?
Yeah, I was in Netherlands. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good ending to the story. Thank God you're still with us and safe, and alhamdulillah. And we can only pray that, all the other political prisoners in Egypt now can be freed someday.
It's horrible, yeah. And I think Arabic saved me here, huh? It's
Of course.
several occasions. This was the most severe one, of course. But it's because I saw this Arabic on X, on Twitter, somebody posting it. That's how it caught my attention. If I did not know Arabic, I would not have known that they were looking for a Dutch person. So yeah.
And since we're short on time, I want to ask one final question, and I want to end on a happier note because you just gave one of, in my opinion, the most horrific stories we've shared on the podcast, and you're such a brave individual for coming out of that, and not only coming out of that, going back to Egypt. I think that's a total boss move on your part, and I'm like a total fan now forever because you're incredible. But I want to end on a happier note, at least on a good anecdote or a positive story. Throughout your travels throughout the Levant and also Egypt, do you have one really positive, memorable event or experience that really sticks out in your mind as something that you look back so positively on as probably your best experience in the region, and something that you possibly wish you could do again or see again, whether that be a place, a memory? We just want to impart on our listeners a very positive experience that you went through in the Levant to balance out the negatives that you just went to.
Yeah, actually, it's hard to choose. Actually,
you can give multiple examples, please.
Yeah, from the recent years, the hospitality in Syria, I have been invited by so many people that, because in the north of Syria there are no hotels in the first place, and I would be able to stay only one day, but it's people that open their houses for me as a total stranger. But then for me, it's also in the evening I can speak with the women and so on. So I have much more knowledge about what's going on. Also different aspects and so on. And what was a surprise for me, for example, Azaz and Afrin. I like Arabic music, and they like Arabic, and they were like dancing, and I also like to dance. So I quite in northern Syria, we quite danced a lot, and then I heard a relative of the family who was there, an aunt. She said to the host of the house, she said, like, in the Netherlands they dance exactly the same as here. That was not really the case, but it's because I love Arabic music. But the openness and the friendliness, the hospitality in the Middle East, and also, contrary to what people often think, but people are pretty much honest, just telling what they think, but in a positive way. I also like that. Of course, I don't want to generalize. It's not everyone, but because then you know exactly. I'm also as a Dutch also quite direct. Maybe it's very helpful, to express, to say how it is. So this is a very positive. Next to, like really friendships I made through the years in the Arab world, including in Egypt.
And if you had to pick a
these are
favorite, and if you had to pick a favorite city out of all of the places you've ever visited in the region, obviously, which one would you pick? I know you like it. I know you love Istanbul, and you have chosen it even before Amsterdam. But among the other places that you've visited in the region,
Yeah,
which one do you say?
I always like Beirut very much.
Oh,
Mm,
But I have Lebanese neighbors here and who are here because of the power cuts.
mm.
yeah.
And actually, if Damascus had electricity, I think I would already now be in Damascus.
Well,
But
Idlib has electricity. If that's your only
ah,
concern, would you ever move to Idlib?
no, that is another concern because I really need to do my running and my outdoor sport.
Mm.
And I can do that in Damascus. I've been running now in a park.
Oh,
But in the north, it's nobody does this. It's always
mm.
that was always a hassle in the north. Yeah, this may be nice or good to also point out. You have Sunni in Damascus, Sunni Arabs, and Sunni Arabs in the north, but the difference is huge, huh? I
Yeah.
think between Sunni Muslims in Damascus and Sunni Muslims in the north, it may be bigger than between Christians and Sunni Muslims in Damascus itself. For example, it's food for thought. Huh?
There's
But
a lack of cosmopolitanism in the
yeah,
northern
yeah,
areas where we
yeah.
mix more in
So
Damascus.
it's way more conservative. They would say stay at home, stay at home. But I don't want to compromise on sports and doing things, So it's always a little bit hard to get enough. I take my Pilates mat with me when I go to Syria and
Hmm.
do that, and then I say, "I'm sorry, guys. Now I know 1 hour. And sometimes the girls of the house think, "Oh, that's interesting. Can we join you doing this exercise?" It also happens.
Of
that
course, yeah. Everyone's
yeah,
eager
yeah,
to try something new. But
yeah.
all right, thank you so much, Rena, for your time. We really appreciate it. You're such a brave individual, and thank you so much for the work that you do on Syria and for telling people, the different perspectives that you gather from your experiences and your research. You're a better Arabic speaker than I am. We could not maintain a conversation the way we have right now without English. And so that's why we felt like you were a great guest to have on, and we're hoping maybe sometime in the future when more news comes out, we can have you back on.
That'll be excellent. And not only that, you have an incredible story. You're super brave. And I was just blown away the entire time you were talking about your experience in Egypt. So, I mean, kol hakavod, all the respect to you. Like, you have an incredible, incredible story, and you're incredibly brave. And it was an honor to have you on.
So Dalaha, thank you very much. But all these Syrians that I still feel my story is small compared to all these Syrians who with a risk. And
Of
also
course.
Israelis now, by the way, with the risk of being imprisoned, go out and protest. And we now in Israel, we were talking about Omdim B'Yachad. They are
Saying, yeah,
also being
yeah,
arrested. Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So, I feel like given with my background, what happened in Germany, I have to speak out. And
Of
since
yeah.
course.
I know Arabic, since I know Hebrew, I do my field. I know there are many other countries where horrible things happen.
And you
But
do
I
a
thought,
great job of transmitting news, at least from my perspective, because I'm not like my Arabic isn't the strongest. So I see you do a lot of translating of the news into English, and I really appreciate that. And I'm appreciative of that. Same thing with Hebrew. And so if anyone is interested in news in the region, I really highly recommend that you follow Rena Netjes on Twitter, on X. It's just her name at Rena Netjes. And if you want to leave us off with an inspiring message of hope, I'll give you the final word.
okay, thank you. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, by the way.
Blue Sky
Um,
app, perfect.
what I want to say is that I see some Western analysts saying that Syria will fall apart into, different areas and so on. But that's not what I sense what's going on. Yes, there are some, as I explained, there are some people who want that, but it's not the majority. And I think against all odds, it's pretty much unbelievable that Syrians, all what they went through, that they still have this Syrian identity and still have this patriotism and the will now to build a country. Like the most difficult thing is done, get rid of the Assad regime. Yes, there are problems, there are all kinds of problems, but they are able to be solved. And it might really take time and efforts and everything, but I think the Syrians can do it.
I think so too. And I look forward to hopefully talking about this in Damascus with each other one day.
Great, let's do that.
Hope
Thank
so.
you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here, and we really appreciate your time. Take care. Bye. Bye.